week 8 of the fantasy football season. His tight end starts at every matchup this week. A lot of teams on bye. And some of these tight ends you wouldn't think of playing. You might put in your starting lineup. The first game Thursday night, Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Chargers. TJ Hawkinson is start. I know the numbers haven't been great this season, but as long as Carson Wentz is in their quarterback, he gives all these guys on this offense the best chance to maximize their fantasy numbers. I know Sam Darnold, he was great for them last season, but obviously he left in free agency, and they rather have went with McCarthy over Sam Darnold, and obviously he hasn't panned out yet for Minnesota. But Hawkinson in a matchup where this Charger defense hasn't been playing well is a start. On the Gatson, he broke out last week with a monster game, 7 catches, 164 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So this kid, he has it all. Can work the middle of the field. He's a matchup problem, and to have a quarterback like Justin Herbert that's going to get you the football in the right places is a plus. So he's a must start. This week, New York Jets at the Cincinnati Bengals. Mason Taylor is sit. He had a couple pop games here and there as Mason Taylor, but I think this New York Jet offense will operate better with Tyrod Taylor in their quarterback in terms of pocket passing and getting the football out quick, where Justin Fields just keeps holding on to that football and taking big hits. And the Jets finally made the move to Tyrod Taylor. But Mason Taylor is sit. Noah Fant is sit. Last week, a good game, 4 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. But he's still the 4th option, 5th option on this offense. Obviously, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown are going to get theirs before Noah Fant does. But with Joe Flacco in there at quarterback, that's one thing about Flacco. He always targeted the tight end position. But this week, even in a decent matchup, he's a sit. Buffalo Bills at the Carolina Panthers. Dalton Kincaid to start. He missed a game in Week 6, which was a big loss for them, obviously, with the oblique injury for Dalton Kincaid. But he's arguably the number 1 option in this passing game for this Buffalo Bill team. He can run the middle of the field. He's good up the seam, and he's got the knack for the end zone. Is Kincaid, a former first-rounder. So this week at the Carolina Panthers, he's a start. Jatavian Sanders a sit. Pretty much besides Tedor McMillan in the passing game, and obviously Rico Dotto and Chuba Hubbard in the backfield. No one is consistent enough in this Panther offense. I know Leggett had a nice game last week, but from the tight end position between Tremble and Sanders the last couple seasons, Carolina has had no production pretty much. And I know Dalton's in there, and he's a veteran quarterback where he's going to hit tight ends and spread the football out. But still, Sanders a sit for me in this one. San Francisco 49ers at the Houston Texans. George Kittle will start. Last week he came back from injury where he had a bad hamstring injury, was George Kittle. But I think this week, Houston, he's going to go out there. He's going to have a good game. He had to get his legs under him, get his wind under him as well last week. And also it was the Christian McCaffrey show where they kept feeding him in that game. And obviously Atlanta couldn't stop him. But Kittle this week at Houston to start. Dalton Schultz to start, coming off the best game of the year for Schultz. 9 catches, 98 yards. And with Nico Collins, I'm assuming he's going to be out in this game where he went in concussion protocol. And obviously it was a Monday night last week at Seattle where he got concussed. So I think Collins is going to be out. And Schultz will be the number 1 option in this passing game. Guys like Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, they haven't done much this season. So obviously if Collins is out, Schultz is the number 1 guy in the passing game for this Texan team. New York Giants at the Eagles. Theo Johnson, he's been on a touchdown tear ever since Jackson Dart stepped into the starting lineup. I know last week's TD was fluky, bounced off of Wan'Dale Robinson. By chance, he was there. Theo Johnson caught it and ran it into the end zone. But this week at Philly, where I think Philly's going to come out to a quick start, this Giant team's going to have to play some catch-up in this game. And that's where Theo Johnson, top 2 option in this offense behind Wan'Dale Robinson. Dallas Goedert to start. Had a big game a couple weeks ago versus Giant defense, over 100 yards, and found the end zone. I know last week he didn't do much, but this week I think Dallas Goedert goes out there, bounces back, and this Eagle offense is starting to click on all cylinders. Cleveland Browns at the New England Patriots. David Njoku, he missed last week's game with a knee injury. We'll see if he returns this week in New England. And Harold Fannin Jr. had a dud game where obviously he was the starting tight end and getting every snap in that game. So Njoku, I think he's going to get traded before the trade deadline. Trade deadline is in a couple weeks here. He's an expiring contract for this Cleveland Brown team, and they got the youngster Fannin. But both these tight ends, to me, are fringe options because this is a pretty tough matchup versus the Patriots. Hunter Henry, a fringe option. The last 3-4 weeks, Henry's numbers have gone down. Obviously, Drake May spreading the football all around the field. Stephon Diggs, Kayshon Boutte. We've seen Demario Douglas make some plays as well, and Stevenson can catch the football a little bit out of the backfield. So like I said, Hunter Henry to begin the year, he was putting up good numbers, but the last few weeks, pretty much non-existent to low-scoring fantasy days for him. Chicago Bears at the Baltimore Ravens. Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet sits. You would think Colston Loveland would start breaking out for this Bear team, where they used high draft capital on him with a 10th pick overall and taking him over Tyler Warren, which obviously has looked like a big mistake so far in the first 7 weeks of the season. So Loveland and Kmet, like I said, haven't seen much from them this season. They're easy sits. Mark Andrews a start. Obviously, if Lamar Jackson returns to the lineup this week here for this Baltimore Raven team, he's going to spread the football out, and Mark Andrews has been one of his favorite targets for many seasons. And I know this Bear defense has been playing a little bit better, but they still think that's going to be a factor in Mark Andrews not going out there and putting up some points. If Lamar's in the lineup, Miami Dolphins at the Atlanta Falcons, Tanner Gordon's going to be the tight end now. Darren Wall looks like he's going to be out a few weeks with the pec injury, unfortunately, for this Dolphin team. And Waller was playing good, but another guy going down in this offense. And we know Waller throughout his career has been injury prone. So Tanner Gordon, we saw him early in the season, obviously filling for Waller before he was ready. He didn't do much. He's an easy sit. Kyle Pitts a start. Last week he had a good ball game, Kyle Pitts. And this season definitely more consistent last, even though he's had some inconsistent games here and there. But this week in a slam dunk matchup versus a Miami defense that can't stop anyone, he's a start. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints, K-Dot in a start. The last 3 weeks here, he's in this offense as K-Dot, and he's making plays. Big target, 6'7", 6'8", in the red zone especially. And now with Mike Evans out, they're going to need another guy to step in and make plays. Emeka Egbuka, we know he's having a great rookie season. Chris Godwin, I think he'll be back after the bye in Week 9 for this Buck team. So K-Dot in a good matchup on the fast track in New Orleans as a start. Juwan Johnson, he's a fringe option in this game. Last few weeks before last, he didn't do much with Johnson, but finally got him back going in the passing game. And he had some good games early in the season, but anyone in this offense besides pretty much Chris Olave this season haven't been consistent and really fantasy options week in and week out. So Johnson, a fringe option, and Taysom Hill, if he's not running his gadget wildcat formations, he's not really doing much, and he's a sit this week. Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Chigo Kwango, he's had a couple decent games this season, but no one in this offense, like I've said in other videos, have really done anything for this Tennessee Titan team besides the kicker, and Tony Pollard had a couple good games here and there. So this week in a matchup in Indianapolis, we know Tennessee most likely going to be trailing early and often. I still don't see a Kwango doing much, and like I said, he hasn't done much in the last couple seasons. Tyler Warren, a must start in this game. Seems like he scores a touchdown weekly, and already he's one of the best, if not the best, tight end in fantasy football is Tyler Warren this season. Him and Daniel Jones are locked in. He's a matchup problem. He went in the first round for a reason in the past NFL draft, and this week in a good matchup versus Tennessee, I think he takes advantage of them. Has another big game. Dallas Cowboys at the Denver Broncos, Jake Ferguson is start. Jake Ferguson, he's been a touchdown machine after it took him a year and change to score a touchdown. And ever since that Week 5 game at the New York Jets, he's been going off, and him and Dak Prescott have been locked in. You thought maybe last week with CeeDee Lamb coming back to the lineup, production will go down. But Jake Ferguson and Dak, like I said, a great combo it's been. And Ferguson really has earned his contract so far this season after signing the extension in the offseason. Evan Ingram, a fringe option. We know this Cowboy linebacking crew, one of the worst linebacking crews in all pro football. And Evan Ingram, he's had a couple decent games here and there, but if they could get him going in this offense and possibly emerge as a number 2 option, this Bronco offense could really be dangerous. So this week, he's a fringe option. Final 2 games of the week, Sunday night, Green Bay Packers at the Steelers. Tucker Kraft, one of the better tight ends in the league. He found the end zone last week, and arguably he's the number 1 option in the passing game, him or Romeo Doubs right now for this Packer team. So this week in a matchup at Pittsburgh with their defense, they didn't look good at all. And we saw Noah Fant go for 44 yards and a touchdown versus D last week. Kraft's to start. Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith assists. I know Freiermuth had the monster game, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns in last week's ball game. But before that, he only had 7 catches in the first 6 weeks of the season was Pat Freiermuth. So I have to see a little bit more out of him, even though I did recommend him on the waiver wire this week. He's a sit. And Jonnu Smith is a touchdown-dependent tight end. He's got a couple touchdowns on the season, but besides that, he hasn't done much. I know last season he was arguably the best tight end in fantasy football the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, but this week he's a sit. And the Commanders at the Chiefs, Monday Night Football, Zach Ertz found the end zone last week. He's a touchdown-dependent tight end more weeks than not. And we know Zach Ertz has been in the league a very long time, but he still has good route running, still has a good IQ. But this week in a tough matchup at Kansas City and possibly with Debo McLaurin coming back, he's a fringe option. And Travis Kelce is start. I said in other videos, though, Kelce's going to take a hit. Obviously, the production. We saw it already last week. Rashee Rice had 2 touchdowns. Hollywood Brown had a touchdown in that ball game. But Kelce still can run the routes. Him and Mahomes still have the ESPN rapport. But the thing with Kelce, he's another guy. If he's not scoring a touchdown, though, most weeks, he's going to score in that 8-10 fantasy point range in PPR leagues. And most of that's tight end starts it every matchup for week 8 of the fantasy football season.